Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is internationally syndicated solely due to the love and support that you all continue to give. We're available across all major distributors, and as long as you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in, because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Carolyn Gora. Now we're going to be discussing her amazing book, The Almost True Story of Birds of Paradise. Available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a whole host of other places. But if you want to gather everything that Carolyn has in store, check out her personal site, and that's goraart.com. There, you'll find more information on her, more information on the book, hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing pages. But get this, Carolyn has another book that she's written. That one is called The Birds of Paradise. Visit a Fern Forest. And while you're at it, check back in frequently, because there's a third book still in creation, not available for purchase just yet, but you're going to want to get that one the moment it's available. And that one will be entitled The Birds of Paradise Hike in a Mushroom Woods. All three, of course, as you can tell by the title, it's a series of books. So we're going to be following these birds of paradise throughout their journey, and it's something you're going to want to get involved in. Once again, that's goraart.com. And I quickly want to point out the fact that Carolyn was brought to us by one of the best publishing firms in the business, Citi of Books. So for my writers out there who have gone through their process and now you need help moving the masterpiece you just developed, well, look no further than Citi of Books, people, because they're one of the best movers in the business. Head on over to citiofbooks.com today and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is a true pleasure to have Carolyn here on the line. People, trust me when I tell you, this book is something so fun. But not only is it fun, it is educational. It transforms these quote-unquote boring plants into dazzling birds of paradise. And parks come alive with plant-animal hybrids. Trust me when I tell you, this children's book blends nature, imagination, and life lessons into a vibrant adventure. We're going to talk to her and discover how she brought this enchanting book to life, the inspiration behind her quirky characters, and why this book is a must-have for curious young minds. And I'm just going to say it, for some grown-ups as well. All right, there's education to be had here all around. And Carolyn is the expert, so let's invite her here with us. Carolyn, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. Better than I deserve, Carolyn. Thank you very much for asking. I appreciate it. And listen, we're looking forward to this discussion. What you've done here, I think, is balance beautifully an entertaining story with a lot of education. And, someone that has had a brief stint in education myself, and I know a lot of educators in my inner circle, I understand that, man, when you're trying to teach those kids, you gotta have that balance, because if it's not entertainment, forget about it. And they're going to tune you out. They're not listening to you, and they're going to go some other place. So thank you for writing the book. Thank you for being here with us to discuss it. First and foremost, Carolyn, let's learn a little bit more about yourself. Tell us more about your background, please.
Well, I was an art teacher for 30 years in every level from kindergarten through university, mostly in a middle school art school. And one of the things I did at university was teach elementary teachers, how to use art in their classroom. So I've used all sorts of mediums, and I'm now a retired art teacher, and so I have a lot more time on my hands to do art and to volunteer.
Well, there you have it. Well, listen, I knew that you had an education background, and the art background now makes so much sense because the illustrations found in the book were done by you. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. I got this idea because I live in Florida, and my Birds of Paradise actually bloomed, and there was an art show called Tropical Botanicals. And I thought, I just don't want to just do a picture with a bunch of flowers. And the Birds of Paradise looked exactly what they're called. They look like birds, So I started doing a series of more adult-themed artwork with these birds characters in it that had like cute names like Birdie Gets a Birdie. Or Little Birdie Told Me, things like that. So that's where this whole idea came from.
I couldn't help but notice that the transformation from, your boring plant in the book to a colorful bird of paradise is such a powerful metaphor, right? And there's a lot of discussion that we could have just on that. Well, I'm curious, when you were creating this, did you think of the concept or a message that you wanted children to take away after recognizing this transformation?
Well, let me tell you how I got to that. So it is kind of an ugly duckling kind of story.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is I'm a grandmother, and my granddaughter was 7, and I didn't have any bucket list like I was going to write a book. But I thought I'm going to try and write a book for her that she can read, because a lot of the books that I would read to her were just so involved. There was just so much, and I thought this needs to be simple. So I wrote the book and illustrated the book, and I got halfway done, and I didn't know what to do with it. I got to a point where these birds decide to go on a trip, but I didn't know what to do. So my granddaughter came to visit, and she and my daughter came up with the idea that they were going to find plants that are named after animals, and then they morph into the animals.
I love that. All right, well, you got some education there. You got use of imagination. This is something right up my alley. Well, I'm curious. So sticking along those lines, so now we know where the precipice of all of this began. Well, creating this book, you're wanting to balance that entertainment with the education. Talk to us about the struggle, or maybe it wasn't a struggle. Maybe it was just a sense of ease that you had given your educational background. But talk to us about balancing those two throughout this writing process.
Well, it wasn't that difficult. I did research, and honestly, there are so many plants out there that fit into that genre. So the first book I wrote, I only had 4 plants that were local to Florida, besides the bird of paradise. I had like a tiger lily, and I had a butterfly bush, I had an elephant ear, and I had a shrimp plant. That was it. But that was just a beginning. Then I started getting ideas about, my gosh, there's so many more animal plants that are out there. And I have a list of, I've got so many that I could use. And I looked to see if there had been anything else like this before that had been printed up. And I have not seen anything, that has that idea where it's how to learn about plants.
Yeah.
I've actually taught this book. I've gone to schools and libraries and summer camps, and I've taught this book. And what's really cool is the kids will say, I have that plant in my garden. I saw that plant. Or they'll say, I want to buy that plant. And last week, I had a kid that came to class. The reason they came to the library, the reason he came, he knows all about birds of paradise. He just had all the scientific names, and I learned so much from him, too. So it really got them, that was the whole idea. It's educational, and it got them thinking about, the plants that are in their own gardens or that they might see, outside.
Yeah. People, I'm telling you, you got to pick up copies. Once again, the book is called The Almost True Story of Birds of Paradise by Carolyn Gora. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's goraart.com. While you're at it, check out her other book, The Birds of Paradise Visit a Fern Forest, and check back in frequently for the third one that's still in creation. That one is going to be called The Birds of Paradise Hike in a Mushroom Woods. No one knows them as well as you do. Carolyn, dealer's choice, choose one of your books and give us a brief synopsis.
Sure. So the next book that I did was called The Birds of Paradise Visit a Fern Forest. And I got a book on ferns of Florida, and that was my big starting point. And I have a lot of ferns at my house. It's pretty tropical here. So many of these ferns I have growing. That's the beauty of it. And I had these birds go on a birdcation, and they went to this fern forest. And what it happens is they look at a fern, they'll see a fern, and it will look like something. For instance, one of the ferns is a staghorn fern. There's these great big giant ferns that look like they have horns on them. And so the fern itself turns into a stag. It's a spider fern. It turns into a spider. There's a crocodile fern, and it turns into crocodiles. I mean, a crocodile fern has a very bumpy surface. So you can see, when kids see it, they can see where the name came from. And it ends up, there's about 9 different ferns that I was able to find, and it ends up, they go to sleep in a bird's nest fern, which is a fern that looks like it has a bird's nest in the middle, and the fern leaves come out and curl. So these are all ferns that exist in nature. And that kind of morphed into, these aren't plants, but then I saw that mushrooms, there are so many mushrooms that have animal names. And so the third book is the birds go with their bird packs, and they go to a woods, and they discover all these ferns that are either in logs or on trees. And there are ferns, like there's a lion's head fern, there's a turkey tail fern, there's a chicken in the woods fern. I mean, I could keep going. There's a pig's ear fern. You would be surprised what's out there. So the same thing is the birds see these ferns, and I try to paint as realistic as I can. And then they look again, and they're these animals. And I'll tell you something, this is really interesting. I was teaching a class in an area, not a high-level area, let's just put it that way. And I'm talking to this 3rd grade class, and one of the kids raised their hand and said, "This is personification." I think teacher, her smile. I mean, they got it. They totally understood what this whole book was about.
Yeah.
So, and one of the first times I read the book, he was probably 5 or 6. He said, "Is your book fiction or nonfiction?" And I said, "Well, it's both. It's fiction because these birds are not real, but it's nonfiction because these plants are." So these kids are a lot wiser than you might think they are. They get it. They get it that it's not real. Yeah, I'm really thrilled the way that kids have understand, what we're trying to teach them.
People, you got it, all right? You know where you got to go. I'm going to say it again. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's GoraArt.com. You got to pick up copies of these amazing books. I'm telling you, your children are going to love it. They're not even going to realize that they're learning. And you, listening in as the parent, as the gift giver, as the adult, are going to find a lot of greatness in this as well. So trust me when I tell you, whether you're a nature lover, a budding botanist possibly, or just a fan of a heartwarming tale, these books will leave you inspired and maybe even seeing your garden in a whole new light.
The thing about the books I wanted to say, too, is that I've had kids from 5 years old to on up be able to read the books themselves. And I think that's a really important part of this book, because I wrote this book for children, once they learn how to read, to be able to read it. So I think that's a very important part of this. Yeah. And I was inspired by an author illustrator named Eric Carle. We all grew up with him. And if you think about his books, he had his own way of illustrating, but they were always about something about science, but in a way that children could understand. And that's kind of my role model of, trying to teach science through something that kids understand.
Right. I mean, that's key. That's key to all of it. Carolyn, this has been a true pleasure, an absolute delight. I really do mean that. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you.